back to Miss Rosie's class. Today, I want to tell you a secret. In my classroom, there are no rules. When I was a kid, I hated following rules, especially when I didn't know why they were there in the first place. So when I became a teacher, I knew I had to make sure that my students understood and agreed with every single rule in our classroom. Now, the obvious solution would be to do what most teachers do. Go through the list of rules on the first day of school and explain why each one is important and why the kids should follow them. But I knew from my own experience that this didn't necessarily mean that all my students would be on board. And if students aren't following the rules, whether because they don't want to or they just don't understand them, then what's the point of having the rules at all? Of course, I also knew that as a first-year teacher, my classroom couldn't just be complete anarchy. There had to be a set of expectations that we all had to follow in order to keep everything running smoothly. But I still didn't like the idea of just making all the rules myself. So on the first day of school, I had my students all sit down together and all together come up with a list of rules for our classroom. I wrote all their ideas on a big poster, and I had to admit that even for second graders, they were pretty reasonable. They had come up with things like no stealing, no cheating, raise your hand, don't talk while others are talking, be quiet, do your work. Now, I could be pretty sure that my students understood these rules because they were the ones who came up with them, but something still wasn't quite right. I had the feeling that my students were telling me rules that they thought the teacher wanted to hear, rather than things that they actually thought were important for the classroom. And besides, I didn't want a quiet classroom. I wanted one where students were asking questions and working together, moving around and making messes. So the next day, I came back with a new poster. At the top of this one, I wrote the perfect class, and then below that, I divided it into 5 sections. This time, instead of asking students what they thought the rules should be, I asked them to imagine what their perfect classroom would be like. And in the process, I learned a lot about them. They wanted a classroom that was beautiful and colorful and even organized. They wanted it to sound noisy sometimes and quiet other times. They wanted to hear stories and music and talking and laughter. They wanted classmates who were kind and helpful and good listeners and who always tried their best to learn every day. They wanted a teacher who was funny and kind and who never yelled at them even when they made a mistake. They wanted a class that felt comfortable and safe and fun and soft but not sticky. They wanted to feel brave and happy and cozy and warm. And as I was looking at their list and trying to figure out a way that I could use it to create a set of classroom rules, I realized that what I was actually looking at was my students' values. These were the things that were most important to them in a learning environment, so these should be the things that we were all working together to preserve. So I gathered my class together one more time, and I told them that actually I didn't think we needed to have any rules at all. Instead, we all needed to agree on some values and promise to keep them no matter what. By the end of the week, we had our list. We keep our classroom beautiful. We always do our personal best. We help each other grow. We are brave and try new things. We let others learn their way. We are patient. We only use kind words. We ask questions and find answers together. We have fun every day. For the rest of the year, these were the values that we shared as a class, and they helped us work through most of our problems. Instead of telling my students that they had to raise their hand or they had to take turns, we all understood that everyone needs to be patient. Instead of punishing students for getting off task, I just had to remind them to do their personal best. And when things got out of control or if supplies didn't get put away, I just had to look around and say, is our classroom beautiful? Because the class values belonged to the whole class and not just the teacher, students actually wanted to uphold them. So yes, from that very first year, I have been that crazy teacher who doesn't have any rules in her classroom at all. But somehow, I think the kids are still turning out okay. Thank you so much for joining me today in Miss Rosie's class, and I'll see you next time.
Studycat!